So it is now that time of year where all influencers start sharing their gear, so they hopefully can get a little bit of affiliate marketing done, and you can do so also with my video down in the description. So this is my video of all my gear, basically what I use for photography and for vlogging. And since I did my last video 1.5 years ago, a lot of things have changed. So first and foremost, you guys keep asking me, what am I using as a camera? And some of you have noticed that I'm using the Sony A7R III. And yes, I used the Canon 5DS before, but I switched to this one for a few different reasons. First and foremost, the tilting screen, which is very nice. I would have preferred it to be like a fully articulating screen, which I could take out and flip around, but this one does pretty good. Then of course it's the 4K video. As you have noticed, I have updated all my video making to 4K, which I personally think just brings out like an entire new level. It's way more immersive, way more cinematic. It just looks better in 4K. This one is of course also a low light beast. Obviously it's not the best on the market, but this is like the best all-round camera I could find. I was a little bit in doubt if I should go with the Nikon D850, but changing all the stuff to Nikon, I wasn't too happy about that. I already knew about the Sony system from my smaller cameras, the A6000, which I am filming on now. And I was more comfortable with Sony. It's also a little bit smaller. It's way smaller actually. Of course, the Sony also have a way better dynamic range than my 5DS. Does that influence my shooting? Yes, a little bit. I usually just bracket with 3 now, whereas sometimes I had to bracket with 5 with this one, just to be sure I got the entire dynamic range. But it doesn't really change much in how I approach a scene and how I shoot it. But I do know that in different scenes I can just do 1 exposure now, where I did 3 exposures before with my Canon camera. And that have actually made me a little bit more lazy, because I simply just bring up the shadows instead of using luminosity masking or HDR software to blend different exposures. The penalty from raising the shadows on this camera is not big noise-wise. But if you actually do go in and really pixel peep my photos, you will see that after I've switched to Sony, my shadows have a tendency to be a little bit more noisy than they did when I was shooting on my Canon, simply because I don't bracket all my photos anymore. Obviously this one also has fantastic battery life. It's now fully on par with the big Nikon or Canon DSLRs. So yeah, that I really love that, and was one of the reasons why I was very hesitant to change to the A7R Mark II. But now with the A7R Mark III, full battery life, so good. It has also been easier to switch from Canon to Sony because of all the customizable buttons on the back. I can basically customize all the buttons so they are almost like how the buttons are on my Canon camera. So the switch here was fairly easy. The weather sealing seems to also work really well. I have had it out in rain and storm, no problems. I've had a wave of salt water hit it. Again, I just turned it off immediately and took out the battery, and then I poured half a liter of fresh water all over the camera, simply just to get all the salt away from it, and it doesn't seem to suffer at all from that little experiment. Another thing I've started to play around with is that pixel shift shooting, whereas you take 4 pictures and then you overlay them with the Sony software, and as long as nothing is moving, and that is very important, the pictures come out extremely sharp. Now, in my opinion, for the most part, you don't need that at all. Like, if this is 42 megapixels and the lenses are more than sufficiently sharp. So it's more a thing just to brag, and they do get sharp. They are really sharp pictures. What I have found it's good for is when you make such a sharp picture, you can actually crop it in. So if you don't have like a 400mm lens, you can make a sharp picture like that and then crop it in, and you will still have a very sharp picture. So the biggest issue, which is also its biggest force, is that it's mirrorless. Now the problem is that when you take off the lenses or changes the lenses, you expose the sensor, and that means that a lot of dust is hanging on to the sensor. So because you don't have the mirror to protect it as you have in DSLR cameras, and this have been an issue for me and continues to be. Like, I always have to clean the sensor here, dust it off with a dust blower, or use the built-in cleaning system. Every time I start editing my pictures, I always go through them and remove dust. And that is simply just what comes, apparently for now, with the mirrorless system cameras, no matter the brand. Another issue I've had particular with this one is that when I do get some moist into the hot shoe, it comes up with an error message about that a certain accessory or whatever I'm putting, it thinks I'm putting into the hot shoe, is not accessible with this camera, which is super annoying when you are out shooting, that it keeps popping up with this error. And this is an issue with this camera, and from what I've learned, also the other A7 cameras from Sony, and they do recommend that you put in this little plastic thing to cover your hot shoe. I can't find mine, but yeah, that's what they do recommend. Another thing which I find super annoying is that they have removed the app section from the A7R III. On both my A6000 and my RX100, I can make time lapses with my time-lapse app within the camera. I can't do that with this one. I will need to get a time-lapse cable or device to make time lapses with this one. And I have no clue what Sony were thinking, because apps were what actually made Sony stand out from the other brands in many ways. So I don't understand why, and I sincerely hope that they at some point put that back into the cameras, because that was such a nice feature. There is actually a built-in intervalometer in the 5DS. For some reason, I have just never managed to make it work. It starts taking pictures, and then after 6 pictures it just stops. I don't know if that's particular because this is like my camera, or if it's a problem with all other cameras. I can't really find anything about it on the internet, so it's probably just my camera. So, has switching cameras improved my photos? Absolutely not. It has nothing to do with the camera, as we all already know. It has everything to do with me improving my editing skills and my skills on composition and storytelling. And the camera is just a tool. It's good for low light, it's good for 4K, and the tilting screen does make it all more practical. And it has a better, greater dynamic range, but that actually improves the amount of noise I'm using, because I'm not bracketing anymore. Now I just raise the shadows from one exposure. So all in all, nope. And of course, when you compare to the 5DS is 50 megapixels, and the Sony here is 42 megapixels. And the lenses are more than sufficiently sharp. The 5DS photos are sharper simply just because it's 50 megapixels. So in that way, picture quality wise, no, I haven't improved, but 42 megapixels is more than sufficient to what I do. You can of course also see that I have a L bracket attached, and I like it. It's a cool feature to have an L bracket. Also, it makes the grip a little bit better. I have the one from Small Rig, which is a little bit bigger than other brands L brackets, such as Really Right Stuff, which also makes specific specific L brackets for this camera. Yeah, I like it, no issues, and I will talk a bit more about the peak design clip later, and I don't have any issues with having that attached to the L bracket either. So time to talk about lenses. So of course I have a 70 to 200 millimeter lens, as with most other landscape photographers. I have the f4 version from Sony, the G lens, and it works. Like, there's no big issues with it. It's more than sufficiently sharp, just like my Canon lenses. This one has built-in image stabilization. The thing I really like about this one, it does come with the tripod collar, and I always have like a ball head plate attached to this lens, so I can always like just put it on. I don't have to switch around my plates. Another reason why I of course went for the f4 was simply because that it is half the weight and half the price of the f2.8 version. And when you compare the sharpness, yes, the f2.8 G Master lens is of course a little bit sharper, but there's nobody in the entire world who can see the difference, and nobody has ever complained that a photo was taken with the f4 version over the f2.8 version. And then I have the 24 to 105 millimeter G lens, also from Sony, f4. Fantastic lens. I can't put a finger on anything. It works great as with all other 24 to 105 millimeter lenses. When you do zoom all the way in, it does get a little bit soft, but nothing again which anybody would see the difference. This one comes also with image stabilization, and I really love the versatility of this lens. I love the versatility way more than going for, let's say, 24 to 70 millimeter f2.8. I don't really need that low f-stop on these lenses, as I do have dedicated night photography lenses. And speaking of which, I still have my Sigma 20mm 1.4, which is a fantastic low light lens. I still have the Canon mount version, and I just adapted to Sony with the Sigma adapter. Is there any difference? Well, I haven't actually compared with the Sony specific or Sony mount lens, so I don't know the difference. I know a lot of astrophotographers think this lens has a little bit too much chroma, and it stretches the stars out in the corners a little bit too much. Personally, I don't care much about that. I prefer just to shoot at f1.4 to get those tack sharp aurora images. So yeah, this is like my aurora and star photography lens. So I have also got myself the Laowa 15mm f2. This is a fully manual lens, and I can't talk about how it works because I've actually just received it. But as you can see, there is quite a remarkable size difference between my two night photography lenses here. This one is fully manual. I can't control the aperture via the camera. I have to control it here on the lens, and it comes with both a click feature and a non-click feature. Overall, I'm looking very much forward to trying this one out. And then the last lens in the bucket is this fantastic lens, my 12 to 24 millimeter G lens from Sony. This is what you would call an ultra wide angle zoom lens. And as I said, 12 to 24 millimeter, it is very, very wide, like almost 180 degrees. When I was using my 16 to 35 on my Canon, I kind of felt that I really wanted those extra few millimeters in the broad end, so I can easily sacrifice the focal length from 24 to 35 just to gain those extra 4 millimeters from 12 to 16 millimeter. I was a little bit disappointed in the beginning because I could see that the corners weren't too bad, but when you compare to so many other ultra-wide angle lenses, it's kind of the same. I do have a tendency to crop my images a little bit anyway, which removes that issue with the corners. I'm using this at least 50 to 60% of the time when I take pictures in Iceland. Also, this one is small and light compared to the 11 to 24 from Canon or the 14 to 24 from Nikon. So, or the Sigma 12 to 24. So yeah, again, I really love this one. It is an f4 lens. Again, I don't really need the f2 because I have my dedicated Astro lenses. So with the 12-24, when it is as wide as it is, that also means that it introduces quite a lot of distortion. Again, that is simply just down to physics. And that is something you need to be aware of before buying it, because if you have a certain technique or a certain style of photographing in your mind, you might be a little bit disappointed when you see how much it distorts the scene. So here are a few examples just straight out of camera and unedited, where you can see how much of a distortion it actually makes. So my best advice for you to compensate for this is actually to learn how to use the liquify tool in Photoshop. The biggest downside to this lens is of course the bulky front element and the built-in lens hood. Of course it's physics, it's just how it is, you have to accept it. But when it comes to filters, I will have to use this behemoth of a filter system. It is not too bad. I was very skeptical when I first saw this combined here. You basically just put it on here and then tighten it here. And combining everything here, the filters, with this small lens, it completely obliterates the entire idea of a small mirrorless system. So as you can see, this here, that is very big. And as I said, I was very skeptical when I started out, but I gotta admit that it doesn't really bother me that much. As you can see, this is huge, and it is only because of the 12 to 24mm lens that I have to use this huge filter system. This is the K150 system from KASE filters, and it works great when it's first attached. Of course, you can get smaller size systems from KASE, which is like 10 centimeters instead of this 15 centimeters if you have other lenses and you don't have these bulky lenses here. And let me also just say that KASE sent me these filters and I do represent them. So I am trying them out and I do give feedback to KASE, so full disclosure there. However, when all that is said, my opinion about the filters is they are fantastic. As with any other brand of filters, high quality filters these days are pretty good no matter the brand. There's no perceivable color cast. And even if there is a little bit color cast, no matter the brand, you can of course just adjust that with either the white balance tool or the white balance or a little bit of color grading on your raw file. So it doesn't really matter. They don't influence the sharpness of your pictures either. The Wolverine series here from KASE are supposed to be shock resistant. I fully admit I have not thrown my glass around, but it does give a little bit extra comfort. There are some test videos on YouTube with these filters, so check those out. I'm not going to show you here because I'm not going to take the chance with that. But I would say that the biggest selling point of these filters, beside the shock resistance, is the double-sided multi-nano coating, which is basically just nano coating, which makes them very easy to clean. For some reason, I always find myself in the middle of a stream, in a shower, or underneath a waterfall, and I often get a lot of water on the filters. Luckily, I can just wipe these filters off with a light wipe, and I don't smear out the water, and I don't have to stand and like really push to get the water off. These filters here are just so easy to clean, and I love them for it. So easy to use. And when you compare it to my old filters, I usually at some point always ended up just having to take off the filters because they were so smeared with water and other stuff and got moist, and yeah, they were just annoying to work with. These ones here, even though they are so big, and they are a little bit impractical because for the most part you will need 2 hands to remove the filters. But I'm actually very happy about it. The one thing you need to be aware of is if you are using this big filter system, the K150, and not the K100, which is the 10 centimeter version. When you do have, like I do, a 6-stop filter, a 10-stop filter, and the polarizer. The polarizer is not a Wolverine series. It will break if you drop it. Those filters combined with the filter system, they do weigh quite a lot more than just like a single small screw-on filter. So obviously you have to count that in when you put them in your backpack, that there will be an extra weight. KASE do have smaller screw-on filters, and of course the K100 system, which is smaller than this one. And they also have a system adapter. I have the one for 77 millimeters, so I can actually put it on my 24 to 105 millimeter and use the same filters. However, I would not do that if it's windy, because especially fully extended, the 24 to 105 does become a little bit front heavy, and putting extra weight on it with the filters, there is a bigger risk of your tripod falling over. And especially if it's windy, these big filters will work as a sail. So again, increasing the risk of the tripod falling over, and we do not want that, even though they are supposed to be able to take a beating. So I use a 6-stop filter and a 10-stop filter, both solid neutral density filters, and a polarizing filter. I have never seen a reason to buy or own a graduated neutral density filter. It simply just doesn't go along with my shooting style. If I need a broader dynamic range, I simply just bracket my photos. Speaking of which, enough about filters, let's talk about tripods. I have already made a video about tripods where I share even more information on my tripods and how to use tripods and so forth. And I am still using my Zirui tripod, but since that last video it has started to fall apart. And it is the same issues I experience, and a lot of the workshop participants I met throughout the year are experiencing with these Chinese-made tripods. First and foremost, the legs have a tendency to come loose, and that's simply because that there is supposed to be a stopper here, which is right now within the tripod foot, and they either break or come loose, or yeah, there's just a lot of issues with this particular way of producing tripods. And it's the same no matter if this is the K&F concept tripod, or if it's Zirui, or if it's newer, or any of these other Chinese produced tripods. So yeah, another issue is that these rubber rings here, when it gets wet, they have a tendency to get moist underneath them, which means that they become very slippery, which then again means that you can't tighten the knobs. That's a huge problem, because that's the point of having a tripod which can extend, is that you of course should be able to lock the twists here. But when you can't do that, the tripod becomes useless. And that again is a feature or a production issue with all these kind of tripods. It is hugely annoying. Another thing which I find annoying, no matter also if I'm using my Sirui or KNF concept tripod, is these here. They are supposed to be able to easily come loose, as for me to be able to put the tripod into another position. But sometimes they simply just get stuck and I can't get them properly out, no matter if it's the Sirui or the KNF concept. So yeah, I can't recommend these Chinese produced tripods. I simply can't. However, these tripods are also fairly cheap. And the question is, because I do put my tripods through salt water, volcanic ash, and all the elements which you get in Iceland. So the question is if I should just keep buying the cheap tripods, which cost between $100 and $200, and only expect them to last a season, maybe 1.5 seasons, and then get a new one, or if I should go for $1,000 tripod from Really Right Stuff and hope that that one will last me at least 10 years. I have no clue what to do. For now, I'm very hesitant on spending $1,000 on a tripod, which I am not sure would be able to withstand the elements I put my tripods through. So if you want to know more about tripods, be sure to check out my video on tripods. For vlogging, I'm still using my Sony RX100 Mark IV. It is dying, to say the least. The focus ring here has become very tight. The batteries seem to die faster. The charging thing here is broken, and yeah, well, it still works with autofocus, but I love it for this, so I can see myself. But it is singing on the last verses right now. But yeah, generally a fantastic camera, and I still love it. I just think I need to replace it very, very soon. Then I of course have the A6000, which I'm using to record this video. The good thing about changing to the Sony system is that I can actually use all my Sony lenses with the A6000, which is super cool. So now I use actually my A6000 as my backup camera, even though it's bought it back in spring 2015. It has become more valuable to me. So yeah, I'm very happy about that small camera. Then yes, I'm using the Zoom H1 to record all my sound here. And I am using the Røde lavalier mic to attach with wind muffs, and I use the Røde Video Mic Pro version 2 also still to record all my sound when I'm like sitting here in front of the camera. I can also attach the Røde Video Mic Pro to my A7R III and just record the sound directly into the camera. Then of course, the dust blower, very important. Yeah, you have to have one of these. Then I have a first aid kit. It is super important to have that when you're out in the field. Just with some plasters and bandages or whatever you will need out there to get yourself home if you start bleeding or fall over or something like that. First aid kit, very important. Then I of course also have extra batteries and extra SD cards, which is always nice to have. And I have this folding hex key set. This one is just invaluable to me when you're out in the field and you need to tighten your tripod legs, which also comes loose. Again, a reason why I really don't like those tripods, but they get the job done. And yeah, I have used this one to tighten so many tripod legs, either Sophie's tripod or the workshop participants' tripods. So good to have, and get one of proper quality so that the iron you don't break it while you're actually tightening the tripods. Then I of course also have microfiber cloths. This is actually microfiber towel. I have some from like gas stations, and it's a microfiber cloth. They all work the same. And then I have a small Manfrotto tripod, which is right now underneath my A6000 recording this. But that one is just perfect for vlogging and having as an extra tripod. It's so sturdy that I can actually attach my A7R III to it. And yeah, it works well for vlogging because it has a really good handle. And here in the front pocket of my bag, I have some butt protection when I'm in field. I have a shower cap. Honestly, I'm not using it much, but good for protection in wet situations with your camera. Then I have some extra protection for my boots. I can just put these on top of my boots, and yeah, they work really well. Hand warmers. Of course, you need a headlamp, head torch when you're doing astrophotography and so forth. Yeah, it's invaluable again. And napkins, also important to whatever you will need. And then I have this Peak Design camera clip, which is just, as I said last time, absolutely fantastic. I love it. It's so easy to just put your camera, clip it onto there while you are out hiking, and then you have both your hands free whenever you need that. And as I said earlier, I don't have any issues with the L bracket here. I just put it on. It's Arca-Swiss compatible, so yeah, it's a really nice system. I can't recommend this one enough. There's a version 3 out now. I have the version 2, but I honestly have never had any issues with it. It's a nice, good, sturdy product. Alright, so talking about backpacks, yes. Right now I am using the Tenba Solstice 24 liters, and Tenba reached out to me and asked if I wanted to try it out, if I just like showed it off a little bit in my Instagram stories, and I said yes, and I would also like to do a review, but it had to be an honest review about this backpack. So here I will share my thoughts on this backpack compared to my old backpack, which was the Love Pro Tactic 450AW. This will not be an in-depth review, it is just where mainly I share my experiences between the two backpacks. So the main reason why I'm using the Solstice over the Pro Tactic is because of the depth of the Solstice compared to the Pro Tactic. This one is deeper, which means I can actually have my big filters in it. That is the main reason. I can't have my filters standing up in the Pro Tactic. The extra depth is also good for my adapted lens here. This one I can also have it standing up tight and don't need to like have it laying down in the backpack. So obviously this one actually fills up less space than it would do in the Pro Tactic. When it comes to comfort, there's actually not the big difference between the Tenba and the Love Pro. They both have the chest straps and the belly straps, and everything is adjustable, so I can always change how it sits on my back. The Pro Tactic can open here on the side, so I can reach in and grab the camera if I so choose to have the camera in that position. And I honestly don't miss it. That is because of this peak design clip. Like, I also always have my camera here when I'm out hiking, so I don't really need it for the Tenba backpack. And neither do I miss all the small pockets in the Love Pro, so I can sort out all my small stuff. The Tenba simply just have like one big pocket to all my stuff up here, and it works fine. Like, I don't have an issue with that. The Tenba can also stand by itself because of the extra depth. It's not like tipping over. That actually comes in handy because I mainly have my camera here on top. Whereas in my Love Pro I had the camera in the side. The Love Pro also comes with all these customizable straps, and it's a cool feature. I kind of like it. There's just that problem that the straps have a tendency to fall off. I don't know why they have designed it so that the straps have to be upside down, but apparently they have. And as you can see up here, actually one of the straps have come loose and I've dropped it somewhere out in nature. So all in all, this strap system on paper, good idea, but honestly I don't think it is that useful. Pro Tactic also have this small pouch here to put up a couple of tripod legs into it, whereas the Tenba backpack just have a huge pocket to put it in, and I actually prefer the big pockets. The Pro Tactic here also comes with this water bottle extension, whatever you call it, and it's okay, but you just have to be aware of what water bottle you use, because they have a tendency to fall out if you do like this with your backpack. So it's not really that good. Again, there is plenty of size in the Tenba to put both water bottle and a small tripod side by side in the same pocket. So I actually also prefer the Tenba there. Where I do prefer the Pro Tactic is simply it's so sturdy. It has this hard cover on top, whereas the Tenba doesn't have that. So yeah, all in all, I like the Pro Tactic for the sturdiness, and I actually feel that my gear is a bit more protected in this one. But overall, I'm actually surprisingly satisfied with the Tenba Solstice. So both backpacks comes with a rain cover. The Tenba just have a loose cover you can put on top, and the Love Pro has it attached to the bottom, so you can take it out and wrap it around. To me it's a little bit potato, but I do hard press think I do prefer to have it attached to the bottom, then I always know it's there. And obviously the rain cover is an absolute must when you photograph in Iceland, the Faroe Islands, Norway, or just like generally the cold, harsh north, where there's a lot of like wet sand and ash and salt water and so forth in the air. So yeah, definitely rain cover. You have to have a backpack which can withstand rain and sand and whatever. Both backpacks are in the same price range. I've seen them from like $150 to $200 on the internet. So when it comes to the backpacks, I really like this Tenba. I would say it is the best backpack I have used so far. There are a few features of the Pro Tactic that I miss, but overall, yeah, I am also like locked to this one because of the depth and the filter size I'm using. So obviously if you have smaller filters you might want the Pro Tactic, but overall yeah, I really like this one. So last but not least, of course, my drone, the DJI Mavic Pro Platinum. This one is a little bit more silent than the original Mavic. This one also have a slightly longer flight time. And of course it has the propellers, which is a bit more silent than the original propellers. But you can also buy these for the original Mavic, so there's not a big difference there. 12 megapixel camera, doesn't sound like much theoretically, and especially when you start editing your raw pictures, it does introduce quite a lot of noise. But I haven't found that to be a huge problem, because I have a technique to reduce this noise, to make really clean, beautiful drone pictures. So if you haven't checked out my video on that topic, be sure to check it out, because that technique also applies to all other cameras. So if your camera suffers from a lot of noise, be sure to check that one technique out. Of course, it also shoots 4K video, and that was like the main reason why I bought this for my videos. And it has a lot of nice intelligent flight systems, so I can basically make it follow me or rotate around me and so forth, which I find to be a huge help. I do, however, find that I actually just flies it manually for the most part. The Mavic is not as strong as the Phantom 4 Pro. You have to be a little bit aware of when and where you can fly it in regard to wind, because the wind does influence it quite a lot. It is fairly stable, it's just that if there's a lot of wind, obviously it takes the drone and flies it away. Of course, there's also all these things going on with drone rules, and I am all for having some regulations on the drones, but in my opinion, I also find some of those regulations to be a little bit populistic and over the top. But yeah, of course, it's still a young technology, so obviously as a community we have to like get together and find out what we can tolerate and what not. So of course that will change over time. But yeah, all in all, I really like this small device. A fantastic tool for photography and video. And this was the last thing I wanted to talk about in this video. So if you liked all the information, again, I would highly appreciate if you would use the affiliate links down below. And as always, I hope you liked it, and I would appreciate a like. And if you have any more questions, you are more than welcome to ask down below in the comments.